Calling to order the June MTA Board Meeting. Let's hear the safety announcement and then proceed with public speakers.
Your safety is of the foremost importance to the MTA. Therefore, we ask that you listen and adhere to the following instructions. If you witness an emergency, notify emergency personnel in the room and call 911 immediately. Please follow any audible instructions provided through the public address system or visually on screens in the event of an emergency. If an alarm sounds, wait for a public address announcement and follow instructions. If told to go to another floor or to evacuate the building, leave all unessential items behind and use stairwell A just across the main hallway or stairwell B down the hallway past the elevators. If you have a mobility disability or cannot self-evacuate, please proceed to stairwell D or E for assistance by MTA staff or emergency personnel. An automated external defibrillator, AED, for use by trained personnel is in the main hallway just past the elevators. If you need assistance during an evacuation, please tell an MTA staff member or emergency personnel. Thank you and have a safe day.
Good morning and welcome to the public comment session of the MTA Board Meeting. We have 22 members of the public registered to speak today. As a reminder, we ask that all public speakers adhere to the MTA's rules of conduct and decorum. Public comments must pertain to the specific items on today's meeting agenda. I would also like to remind our public speakers that in the interest of time and fairness to all speakers, we limit everyone to 2 minutes. Please be aware that there will be a warning beep to remind you that we have 30 seconds to conclude your remarks. Our first speaker will be Jean Ryan, followed by Chris Greif.
Hi, I'm Jean Ryan. I'm president of Disabled in Action of Metropolitan New York, DIA for short. I'd like to talk about express buses, one of my favorite topics because I use them. The drivers during the day generally know how to use the lift and move the seats, but sometimes they forget because it's so complicated. And if I didn't know to remind them of something, then they might think that the lift was broken, and it's not. The other thing is that the stickers that are supposed to be on the buses to help drivers learn how and remember how to move the seats and use the lift are not on all the buses. It's not that big a deal to put them on all the buses. I suggest that you ask interns, summer interns, to do that project. They could just make a spreadsheet of the buses that have them and get them on all the buses. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Chris Greif, followed by Lisa Daglin.
Good morning, everyone. Christopher D. Greif. Yes, sir. Good morning. As we are coming up to next month, Disability Pride Month, and we do want to appreciate every year, but I do want to say that even this month when we had the parade of trains, I do want to thank our MTA police and NYPD and every law enforcement because the kids were happy. I am happy. The people, young kids with disabilities were happy. Because it wasn't just safety, they were having a good time and learning the history and learning safety also. And you know what? A lot of people say, oh, there weren't enough cops. They were there, and I was there. And I can tell you, they did an excellent job. That has always been a very good point. But as you know, like we remind people, you see something, say something. And if you don't put it in the app, then how we're supposed to know this? But as we move forward for the railroads, the subways, the accessoride, we still need to make sure our future is still continue advocating to making sure that new train cars, buses, accessoride, even the stations, not just elevators and ramps, but making the stations fully accessible for the future of accessibility. The future is moving forward very well, and we have to continue working together as Disability Prime Month is just around the bend, around the corner, and celebrating the USA 250th birthday. We want to make it clear that since these 7 years we've been advocating, things are getting done. It takes time, but it will get done. So I just want to wish everyone happy belated Father's Day and happy 4th of July and happy Disability Prime Month. Thank you.
Our next speaker will be Lisa Daglin, followed by David Cutherberg.
Hi, good morning. I'm Lisa Dagley, and I'm the Executive Director of the Permanent Citizens Advisory Committee to the MTA PCAC. The actions you take today will help guide the MTA into the future, enabling better commutes and transit trips for millions across the region. We're very interested in Jesse's presentation at C&D that looked at industry challenges in procuring buses, the creative ways you're seeking to address them, including different zero-emission technologies. I recently had the opportunity to check out the Foothill Transit hydrogen fuel cell buses in Depot near LA. Overall, they've had a really positive experience, including fast recharging and good range. But one of their biggest challenges is economically moving to scale. Hopefully, having a large system like ours in the market mix will help reduce overall costs. This is the kind of stuff that we collectively nerd out over. We hope you'll keep the doors open to new design opportunities like BRT, which City DOT seems interested in exploring and which could lead to better bus speed and reliability improvements down the road. The expedited change order process should help with these kind of adaptations and with the M9As. It's so critical to get those off the rails and to get to get those on the rails and the M3s off the rails. Those M3s are older than my kids. Subway riders have a great deal to look forward to as well, with new cars replacing up to a third of the A division and R211s coming to the D, N, Q, and R. Of course, we must be able to assure that all New Yorkers can afford to ride. Fair fares improves access to jobs, education, and more, but if you make minimum wage, you make too much. The city can change this. We're asking the mayor and city council to unlock its full potential, expanding fair fares to 300% of the federal poverty level, FPL, making it fully free to those making 150% FPL, expanding half fares to express buses and city tickets on the railroads, implementing automatic enrollment, which would make a huge difference, and
Please
expanding
conclude your remarks.
these half fares to qualifying paratransit users. We're also keeping an eye on the feds.
Thank you. Our next speaker is David Cutherberg, followed by virtual speaker Jesse Figueroa.
Good morning. My name is David Kupferberg, member Passengers United, a Section 501c3 nonprofit, nonpartisan transportation advocacy group. The goals of the MTA bus network redesign should be close service gaps, expand service to transit deserts, and do both without negative impacts to the core network. The Brooklyn Bus Network redesign draft plan released December 2022 received an overwhelming negative response. In fact, none of Brooklyn's 18 community boards support the draft plan. We think that the MTA should delay the proposed final plan in favor of a new draft plan. At the same time, the MTA should invest 1% of New York City Transit's operating budget, or $126 million, for the Brooklyn Bus Network redesign. Bus stop balancing is a mindless implementation of standard practices by the MTA and New York City DOT without consideration of the effects of their actions. There is no correlation between bus speed and passenger travel time. In fact, the MTA is only considering the 20 seconds saved by buses not having to accelerate and decelerate. But if stops are lightly utilized, then buses are stopping at one stop instead of another, saving no time. But the result for you is an increase in walking time, hence passenger travel time. This also significantly increases the chance of a misconnection. For infrequent service, a misconnection could also discourage bus usage. But the MTA keeps repeating that buses are too slow. The average bus speed in Brooklyn is 7.1 miles per hour, yet cars average only 9 to 10 miles per hour on city streets. Buses make many more stops and have to wait for passengers. It stands to reason that buses would be slightly slower than cars. Therefore, the notion that buses are too slow is a myth. Go to www.passengersunited.org for our counter-proposal of the MTA Brooklyn Bus Network redesign and details on how to sign our petition against bus stop balancing. Thank you.
Our next speaker will be virtual speaker Jesse Figueroa, followed by virtual speaker Lindsay Dobbin.
Good morning. From Puerto Rico, my name is Jesse Figueroa, U.S. Army veteran and accessibility transportation advocate. Happy belated Father's Day, especially my father who passed away 3 weeks ago. I appreciate the condolences you have shared. I also like to say happy belated birthday to Jason Anthony and to MTA Chief Accessibility Officer Kamala Royal. Feliz cumpleaños a ustedes. As we begin the summer season, I'd like to recognize the board's continued commitment to service, reliability, accessibility, progress, and support for the frontline workforce that keeps the system moving. Your leadership ensures that families, seniors, workers, and veterans can rely on safe and equitable transit.
We'll move on to the next speaker, virtual speaker Lindsay Dobbin, followed by Deborah Greif.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. Okay, thank you so much for allowing me the time to speak. My name is Lindsay Dobin. I'm a resident of Brightwater Towers. It's a residential condo building in Coney Island, directly behind the West 8th Street train station. The reason I'm speaking to you today is to call out an urgent need for a safety mesh or fence at the West 8th Street train station. We've been requesting this for years. I've found communication back to 2019 that we've been trying to fight for this for so many years, and it still hasn't been put up. I know Jessica Stanton, the senator, has approved it, and the MTA is holding up the installation. So a little background about me and my family. My husband has lived in this building since 1977. I've lived here since 2012, and we also have a young son. Since 2012, we've had yes, you heard that correctly, 5 vandalisms to our vehicles from the train station platform above. The first 3 vandalisms were car windows being smashed by falling objects. Don't know what they were. The 4th vandalism, which was 4 years ago, orange cones were thrown down from the train platform, and they hit my windshield and they hit the car next to me and caused massive damage, over $5,000 to my car alone. And then fast forward to last week, June 15th, around 5 p.m., we were the victims again of vandalism from the train station. This time, very scary. Concrete blocks were thrown down from the train platform. 1 foot long, 18-inch long concrete blocks were thrown, launched from the train platform, hit my car, demolished my car, my windshield, my hood, my roof, my side view mirror, knocked off. Much damage. So long story short, yes, damage can be fixed on a car. Damage cannot be fixed on a person. If someone was standing there, they would be dead. It's very scary. So long story short, I'm urgently asking for this fence or this barrier to be installed on the platform above. Doesn't have to be fancy, it doesn't have to be expensive. It just has to be something
Please
to keep
conclude
us
your
safe.
remarks.
Thank you. I know many of my neighbors feel the same. Thank you so much for your time.
Our next speaker will be Deborah Greif, followed by virtual speaker William Gotti.
Good morning, everyone. Belated Happy Father's Day. I first am going to do my first issue I have is over on the Long Island Railroad for Jamaica. This is the issue. When I come in from Atlantic Avenue, we're on the platform that's all the way over. Actually, you could say it's near the air train, except there's only one elevator. So if that elevator's out, I'm going to have a problem to get over to try to connect to another train. We also have trouble connecting because it does take time for the Long Island Cares. They're doing a great job to get me upstairs to try to get over. Because unlike being at the other stations where at times they can tell the conductor and both trains leave your doors open and they escort me through the train, which speeds up so I can make my trains if I want to go out to either Montauk Point or if I want to go to the North Shore, but wherever I want to go to connect, it makes it very hard. So I'd appreciate if we can rechange and fix it so that 1, there's a second elevator, but 2, make sure that I and other people who use mobility devices can get over to the next platforms so we can make our connections. I don't feel like sitting there for an hour or more because I missed my connection by a minute. Very frustrating. Now I want to give a big thank you. Sheepshead Bay elevators, thank God. They're there. They're wonderful. Why am I so happy? Because Sheepshead Bay Road is like Broadway. It cuts across. So instead of being tacked on the buses I can walk home. It's 5 blocks, and I appreciate it. So thank you so much for having an accessible elevator on both sides, and the station is so much easier to get on and off. Thank you.
Our next speaker will be virtual speaker Miriam Fisher, followed by virtual speaker Angela Krevichenko. Our next speaker will be,
Hello, can you hear me?
yes.
Okay, thank you. It's Mary Fisher. Bus stops. There are approximately 1,500 bus stops in New York City. Only 20% have shelters from bad weather like the snow we had, hard to remember, a few months back. Heat, rain, hail. Better bus stops have attracted 140% more riders in selected cities. I applaud the DOT for allocating $40 million for bus stop seats, saying seats are a human right. Both seats and shelters are needed by people with disabilities, seniors, kids, pregnant women. We all need better seats at bus stops. I wanted to also talk about elevator outages. We need announcements of subway elevator outages on the loudspeakers, on the trains, on the platforms, on digital displays. Riders with disabilities get stranded for hours, can't get to work, appointments, need to call emergency medical services, a bad use of EMS, which should be used not for riders stranded, but for people with strokes and heart attacks. Please keep this in mind that riders with disabilities get stranded when there are outages that they aren't prepared for, unlike people with mobility, with mobility ability and who can make alternate arrangements. Thank you for listening.
Our next speaker will be Angela Krevichenko, followed by Iris Kelly. Please unmute yourself.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for listening to us. My name is Angela Kravchenko, and I am first vice chair of Community Board 13 in Coney Island, and I'm also vice chair of Transportation Committee. I want to follow up my previous speaker, Lindsay, talking about this issue right behind me. That is the severe safety failure due to the artistic station design on West 8th New York Aquarium Station. And that's the noise we have. But you see the artistically, the fence is lowering down. So the kids gathering right here and they throwing stones right on the people walking through the gate of the station, right on the car, staying right there. So lack of accountability regarding the promise of improvements, it's really disastrous. So we have to do something here immediately. We have to have a net, safety net. If before we could control when the kids throwing stone, it was after the school. Now the school season is out and we are under attack 24/7. Please install the safety net right now before disaster happens. You told we are a few steps away from some fatality. If they hit a car, and the car can hit anyone, any pedestrian. As you see here, the car is passing right behind you. That's first issue. The second issue is the noise pollution. Noise pollution. After months of service disruption, work is done here. We did all the noise mitigation we've been promised to. The noise didn't change. The same screeching. The same screeching, the same shaking, nothing is done. We want accountability. Please let us know formally.
Please conclude
what
your
was
remarks.
done and what is in plan. You can't hear because of the noise mitigation. The MTA
Thank you. Our next speaker will be Iris Kelly, followed by virtual speaker William Gotti.
Yes, regards to the railroad, I do not like your nighttime train connections coming from Long Island, Penn Station trains going to Brooklyn. On the weekends, it's great. If the train comes in 4 after, and you have until 1/4 after to make your connection. But on the weeknight, different story. Then 4 after, we have until 9 after to get a connection. And you have a bad effect when your train is late pulling in to Jamaica Station. It loses my time. I'm connecting to go to an Atlantic train. That means I lose that time, go another half hour just to get home. That shouldn't be, because then I have to wait, change trains again for right, everything else. But that's not right. You should make it a 1/4 after like everything else other nights, because then you give us at least 6 minutes difference if your train comes in late to Jamaica and have enough time to Atlantic. And the other thing for that is that why did you take away the 10-trip ticket? That was very handy, made it accessible for people with dealing with the phone, how to get to connect and make the tickets. It was so easy. But now you have the stupid thing about, oh, you ride 10 tickets, you get 1 free. You come very close, you never get that close to that ticket. One day, so next day you have it, next day it's gone. Then now in terms of the Long Island Assess a Ride for the on-demand program, they need to have for everybody. And then for the ticket, $40 worth, don't have to be every month. Have it where you're down to your last trip, that time you're using it, then replenish it back in another $40 thereafter. Every time you use a certain amount. Because not everybody needs the same amount of trips every month. Some might need it for hearing different problems. Like, say if I'm going somewhere, somebody invited me at the last minute. I can't do it because I had to go 2 days before to book something. And even if I'm off, get off early in the office, and I need to get home, I can't wait for another test ride. I think my original time was. Things change. You should make it much easier for people. Thank you.
Our next speaker will be virtual speaker William Gotti, followed by virtual speaker Norm Miller. Please unmute yourself.
Okay, good morning. Thank you so much for giving us this opportunity to express ourselves and to reach out to the board. I'm on the Board of Cures. I'm also on the board of the Richmond Hill Historical Society, and on the Community Board 9 as a public member. And I'm asking you, for the Long Island Railroad Board President Rob Free, why did he not require notice for the New York State Comptroller of the new transfer agreement for the freight rail concession, since it expires in 2027? There's a vulnerable population along the line that, previous speakers spoke about, rock throwing and all kinds of other things. In our neighborhood, there's a freight line that comes by pretty much 24 hours a day, and is creating noise pollution and other kinds of pollution as well. So we're asking the board to look at the New York Atlantic Railway and its business associates and find ways to enforce the lease agreement so that there's no corner cutting. Also, the Long Island Railroad supervision and enforcement are non-existent today in the transfer agreement. So we're asking the board if there is a way for us to be at the table to discuss this transfer agreement, because it has a negative impact on our vulnerable community and people along the right of way. So please take action to protect the workers, the residents, taxpayers, and now even the IBX ridership. Thank you very much for your time and consideration.
Our next speaker will be virtual speaker Norm Miller, followed by Gayan Padula.
Good morning, MTA Board. My name is Norm Miller. I'm a part of the New York Public Interest Research Group, also known as NIPERG. I would like to say that the Transit Authority should have one of their primary focus being to fix the interlock at the Rogers Junction, which affects the 2, 3, 4, and 5 lines and riders on a weekly basis. That bottleneck has been a problem since 1967. It's amazing that you guys have it as part of a 20-year needs and assessment program, but hopefully you guys should be able to get that fixed before the R262s come around. And the Brooklyn bus redesign, I was gonna mention it, but I believe someone from Passengers United covered that, so I'm not gonna bother mention it other than to come up with a proposed final plan as soon as possible. But I really want to talk about is the Omni fares, because I feel like though it's a ripoff to pay $35 just to get the same unlimited features as we would have for a MetroCard. What I would highly recommend the MTA to do, if they have some tech people working for them, is to create an app just like all the other transit systems across the nation has, that can give you options to say, oh, if you want like a 1 day unlimited ride for $12 or 7 day unlimited for $35. Let us have the same features for Omni as we have for the Metro cards in terms of the unlimited options. I feel like as though an Omni app is needed and it will cover all the needs I just mentioned. Thank you for your time.
Our next speaker will be John Padula, followed by Abraham Zimmerman.
So right here. Thank you. Now let's do it this way. All right, good morning, folks. My name is John Padula, and I'm a supervisor with Educational Vision Services from New York City Public Schools. So, I'd like to ask the powers that be, not only in this room, but beyond this room, what if you could no longer ride buses or subways? What if all your trips had to be scheduled at least a day in advance? And you had no flexibility, no spontaneity? Could you enjoy all the opportunities that this city has to offer, like a Knick game? You know when it starts, but you don't know when it ends. Could you go to work, manage, juggle all your personal responsibilities? You know, this is the reality of thousands, tens of thousands of people that have to use Access-a-Ride. I would prefer not to use Access-a-Ride, but for me, it's a safe option that helps me live my life in the most meaningful, purposeful way that I can. And I'm so glad that this agency is invested in making that better. But that doesn't come free. That comes at a cost. They're doing 1 million trips a month. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? Is that a problem? Some bean counters would say it's a problem. I think an investment in paratransit is a great thing for our city. So I have to ask our state and our city leaders, if you were suddenly confronted with a disability that stripped you of your ability to travel, what would you do? How would you live? Effective government solves problems. It doesn't bury its head in the sand. Where are our city and state leaders on this looming budget issue that paratransit is facing? I'm calling on you, City Hall. We need your help. We need your partnership. This agency does, and the community does. Never mistake disability for inability. And remember, low expectations lead to low outcomes. My name is John Padula. Thank you very much.
Our next speaker will be Abraham Zimmerman, followed by Crispin Drakes.
Good morning, dear board members. My name is Rabbi Abraham Zimmerman. I'm a member of a Central Rabbinical Congress who in turn represents tens of thousands of Orthodox Jews living in the city. First of all, I want to thank the MTA for providing a great service to our city. However, we have one grave concern that hurts and pains us terribly. That's the ads that you have on the front and the side of the buses. One ad, for example, is Museum of Sex, and other sexual attracting ads. We try to raise our children and grandchildren and shield them from anything that attracts them to sex. While MTA should do whatever they can to raise revenue, it shouldn't do so in a way that hurts and offends so many youngsters and parents. Orthodox Jews are forbidden to willingly look at ads and images that attracts them to sex. We are very hurt and upset when such ads are thrown and forced in front of our faces. We plead and we beg with you, please, please, don't put such ads that offend and hurt thousands of law-abiding citizens. none of you ladies and gentlemen would want your children or grandchildren to be exposed to something that you consider indecent by your standards. So please, respect the religious beliefs of others and don't force these ads upon us. There's constantly signs. When you see something,
Please conclude your remarks.
see something, say something. We say, please, we don't want to see.
Thank you. Our next speaker will be Crispin Drakes, followed by Lauren Scandeville.
Morning. Morning. My name is Crispin Drakes. I am MTA car inspector for 20 years and also United States Army veteran. I've also been a member for TW Local 100 for just as long. My union represents thousands of members who operate and maintain New York City subway cars. We're glad the MTA honored the call for fair wages from our brothers and sisters at the Long Island Railroad. The outcome of last month's strike highlights why unions matter. Unions allow workers to unite their voices over common concerns and work with their employer to reach an agreement that often meets both sides' needs. No doubt the riding public also benefits from an agency using so much union labor. Unfortunately, not every worker connected to MTA has guaranteed fair wages or a voice on the job. TW has repeatedly come to these MTA board meetings to raise concerns about working conditions at a major rail car manufacturer that is currently fulfilling 2 contracts with the MTA. We have also offered a solution to curb the behavior of bad corporate actors bidding for government contracts. A good job policy known as the U.S. Employment Plan. This policy has been adopted by transit agencies in Los Angeles and Chicago, and it ensures bidders on major public contracts commit and are held accountable to provide fair wages, benefit, and training to their workers. Earlier this year, MTA released a request for proposal, or RFP, for the single largest subway purchase in its history. And in May, it released another RFP to purchase over 600 commuter rail cars for Metro North. To ensure the public and workers building these cars receive the most benefit from these contracts, we encourage the MTA to amend its RFPs to include a good jobs policy like the U.S. Employment Plan. This is a proven effective way to guarantee the race to the top in this generational investment in rail cars. Thank you for your time.
Our next speaker will be Lauren Scandeville, followed by virtual speaker Alexander Kemp.
Good morning, board members. My name is Lauren Scandeville. I'm a senior campaign researcher with Jobs to Move America. We're a nonprofit advocacy group that works to ensure government funding contributes to good, family-sustaining jobs. I'd like to welcome the 2 new board members, Jeanette Sadiq Khan and Melanie Hartzog. We look forward to working with you both to strengthen the MTA's purchasing process and ensure public funding contributes to good jobs here in New York and across the country. In March, the MTA released a request for proposals, or RFP, for over 2,000 subway cars, the largest subway car purchase in its history. We are calling on the agency to attach a robust good jobs policy, like the U.S. Employment Plan, to this RFP. While the current RFP includes a nod towards evaluating bidders on their job quality, it does not detail how bidders will be evaluated, nor how job quality will be included in the final contract. And it also doesn't require that this information is attainable via FOIL or disclosable to the public, which would ensure accountability and transparency for the significant public investment. More recently, the MTA released an RFP for up to 600 commuter rail cars for Metro North. As the MTA continues to invest its historic $68 billion capital program funds towards railcars, future contracts should also have a good jobs policy with a clear evaluation, implementation, and disclosure process. This is an enormous opportunity, not only to ensure a 21st century transit experience for millions of riders, but also to turn this public investment into good jobs for New Yorkers. Thank you for your time.
Our next speaker will be virtual speaker Alexander Kemp, followed by Rita Friedman.
Good morning. My name is Alexander Kemp. I am the Administrative Vice President of TW Local 100. A week ago or 2 weeks ago, a passenger was murdered on a New York City bus. A week before that, someone was stabbed. A week before that, there was a shooting that the outside of the bus was shot up and someone was shot inside of it. There seems to be a higher concentration of these violent attacks taking places on buses in more recent times. And there's been very little response from the MTA, from the president of the MTA, from Jan Oliba, or for anyone actually caring about the riding public and the people that you represent, your employees. We, the union, have acknowledged this problem. We have presented these problems to you habitually. And now, currently, there are buses being ordered, and we are demanding, not asking, demanding that those buses come with bulletproof partitions. There can be no longer a conversation about whether or not there is a need for it. The need has been proven. There is a dead body on a New York City bus. If you do not believe that that warrants an expedited approach to safety that you control, that you have the budget for, that you have the money to address, this can no longer go in silence. We've presented these issues to you. There were 300 buses ordered. Those 300 buses must come with full enclosures that are bulletproof to protect your workforce. And you also need to use the money from the state budget that was given for excess police presence to be utilized in buses as well as trains. Have a wonderful summer. And I agree with the gentleman about the sex on the bus. It needs to be taken off. It's extremely offensive to children.
Our next speaker will be Rita Friedman, followed by Montoya Clemens.
Good morning. My beloved country has sunken to such a state of depraved morality. I arrived in this country in 1951 as a young child of 4 years with my parents, who were Holocaust survivors, who had been deprived and persecuted of their, of course, everyone knows, by the Germans and the communists, of their civil rights. Arriving, it took us 2.5 years in DP camps, awaiting entry to this wonderful country, which promised life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. 75 years later, I am repulsed at the blatant suppression of these rights by the provocative ads on public transportations, primarily on bus routes. What chance do my children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren, and other members of society have to moral values with such provocative exposure on a daily basis? I implore you to end this perversity. No more indecent acts, and help return to a state of correct ethics. Looking forward to the 250th birthday of this wonderful country. Thank you.
Our next speaker will be virtual speaker Montoya Clemens, followed by virtual speaker Mike Howard.
Good morning. My name is Montoya Clemens. I'm a general customer who has submitted 40 plus MTA requests for guidance to get next to zero help, primarily with Accessoride. Cases closed with no phone call, no email. Cases answered with zero relevancy or passive pick up the phone when this case stated runarounds from the phone. Replies to create new cases with that case ID in the subject line, only to get kicked again. Yesterday, a case filed 21 days ago of a false report closed, and I'm told someone called twice, though my phone number has been active 2 decades and no live MTA calls on the device or online with my provider. No email sent as a backup, and only way I knew the case was closed is my photographic memory, since cases closed do not alert the customers within the MTA. I held 20 minutes for a supervisor and was told none were available, despite my case in the system, 21 days. Like others in the MTA system that have been outstanding since the last World Series. See something, say something in stations, and this outcome. Telling me to pay an unjust bill, yet doing so wipes out the dispute, in their words, only to be told that's inaccurate on your recorded lines. When will this board address mistreating customers, and in my case, a disabled customer more than 2 minutes and forgotten. Thank you for your time.
Our next speaker will be virtual speaker Mike Howard, followed by Wei Wong.
Good morning. Can anyone hear me?
Yes.
How y'all doing? I just want to say that here's my I mean, let me give me a little description of myself. I have a mild intellectual learning developmental disability, and here's my suggestion. If being that I'm just glad that Rockaway Boulevard on the A line is accessible now, but here's what's missing that I've been saying for a long time. Like what I've been saying, if y'all could add accessibility to any of those stations like Rockaway Boulevard that's just been accessible a while now, y'all should add y'all should add back a bathroom to the station. I ain't see no bathroom at that station at all. And I'm gonna say it again. If y'all add accessibility to any station, you must add bathrooms. You know what I mean? And speaking of the A line, it needs to run every 8 minutes on the weekends, not just during the week on middays. It needs to run every 7 to 8 minutes on weekends. Every 15 minutes to Lefferts, and every 15 minutes to and from Far Rockaway. You know? Because I'm getting sick and tired of waiting like a half an hour
Please
for
conclude your
an A
remarks.
train every time I miss one. You know what I mean? Thank you for your time.
Our next speaker will be Wei Hong, followed by Bernard Frischman.
Hi, I am a student from one of Queens High Schools. I'm here to talk about some concerns I have about student OmniCards. The OmniCards we received previous year do not work on the first day of school. They expire at August 31st. Since many of my classmates and students do not receive our student OmniCards until we get to school on the first day of school, this forces us to either walk long distances or pay the $3 fare to get to the location of our school. This harms students who do not have other commute options, creating travel problems to get to school. Please ensure that these OmniCards are at least extended to the first week of school so that we can use them to get to school. In addition, some of my classmates do not get student OmniCards because they live too close to the school or take the yellow school buses. This creates a disparity among students as these OmniCards are the lifeline to get to our jobs, internships, and our extracurriculars. Please do not just give these OmniCards to a select few students and give them to everybody because we all need it to commute, because we all need to travel to places, not just to school. Thank you.
Our next speaker will be Bernard Frischman, followed by virtual speaker Lolita D. Vilova.
Good morning. I'm here to express my strong opposition to the proliferation of the Museum of Sex ads on the front of city buses. These ads demean us. They cheapen the public space, and they are harmful to children. This is particularly relevant because the MTA board could easily have rejected these ads as being harmful to children. These ads could also have been rejected by simply deciding not to accept museum ads as a category. I would like to remind the honorable members of the MTA Board that policies relating to the display of ads apply to the interior of MTA buses, trains, and stations. They do not apply to the city streets. They do not permit the poisoning of the city streets. Children can be sheltered from ads on your property. They can't be sheltered from the city streets. On a personal note, this is not the first time I've encountered this kind of situation. Many decades ago, I was chairman of the Commission on Legislation of Agudath Israel of America, and we had situations of this kind, and we found that there was sometimes differing views, but good faith. I hope that this kind of attitude can be replicated now.
Our next speaker will be virtual speaker Lolita Di Viola, followed by our final speaker, Michael Ring.
Good morning, all. I would like to speak briefly about the issue that I raised on the previous meeting. This is about safety on the platform at the West 8 station in Brooklyn, where juveniles are targeting people and cars below the station. As it was already mentioned, the station barrier is too low, and this causes safety concerns. With help of local politicians, we met with MTA officials this April, and later were informed that protective barriers will be built. We are waiting since April for the project to begin. The transit police helps despite the lack of their resources. They patrolling the station, but a lot of new incidents happen in the interim, damaging people's property and endangering people's life. We urge MTA board to install previously approved cameras at the station, expedite installation of the safety barriers, and place temporary protection barriers to maintain public safety in the interim. We hope that MTA board will take an action to protect our community. Thank you so much. I appreciate your time and efforts.
Our final speaker will be Michael Ring.
Good morning. My name is Michael Ring. If anyone needs a verbal description of my appearance, I'm a 63-year-old white guy. Wear eyeglasses. I really need a shave today. And I'm wearing a vintage Brad Lander t-shirt. I'm speaking on behalf of Disabled in Action of Greater New York. I'm vice president. I'm also chair of the Accessible Transit Advisory Committee that meets here in this building. I'm also coordinator of a Facebook group called Accessoride Complaints. I want to talk about the surveys that are sent out, the customer satisfaction surveys. They're showing a slight increase in satisfaction among Accessoride users. The science on that is kind of fuzzy, this selection of who fills out the surveys. But in my various roles, I receive a lot of feedback about Accessoride. And the feedback always has two words in it: broker services. The vehicles, they're more nimble, they might be cheaper, they're not owned by Accessoride. You know, when you're picked up by a black car or an Uber. The drivers of those cars are not trained by Accessoride. They're very unprofessional. They pick extra people up. They have, drivers have used Gatorade bottles as bathrooms with passengers in the back. And Accessoride passengers shouldn't have to worry about who's picking them up. There's enough problems being disabled that you have to ask and say, don't have a broker services pick me up. I have a history with being treated badly. I'm not sure how it could happen. Broker services vehicles are quicker and cheaper, but there needs to be better oversight between the subcontracted broker vehicles and here at the MTA. It would make things safer and a lot better for everyone who uses them. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Chair Lieber. That concludes our public comment section.
Thank you, Megan, Ruby, and thank you to the members of the public who joined us today. Paige, General Counsel Paige Graves, do we have a quorum?
Yes, we have a quorum.
Okay. Thank you, Paige. I want to start by welcoming one of our newest board members, Melanie Hartzog. Welcome, Melanie. We've gotten to know you in the couple of days that you've been with us, and we're just thrilled that you have joined this group. So Much to work together on, and we're looking forward. Thanks. Now I am going to convene an executive session to allow the board to discuss matters related to collective bargaining. May I have a motion to convene it? Thank you, Blanca. Second, Ms. Mahaltzis. All in favor? We are in executive session. Thanks. Resuming public session. While in executive session, the board discussed and voted affirmatively on labor agreements between the MTA and various labor unions. Not to be coy, it's the labor agreements coming out of the Long Island Railroad strike that we covered. So, as I said, the board voted to approve those agreements, which have previously been ratified by those 5 unions. Important milestone. I have Mr. Zuckerman wanting to be recognized.
I just wonder, Mr. Chair, if it'd be helpful if you, there's been numbers reported for some time about what was agreed to, and maybe given that we've ratified the agreement and voted on it as a board, maybe it'd be worthwhile to just talk about the true economic impact, about what and how you landed on that concession for union, please.
Thank you. It's pretty straightforward, which is that while there was, as was reported, an agreement on the 4th year, which was outside the previous pattern, there was agreement on the 4th year as a 4.5 general wage increase, GWI. There were also in the agreement offsets that brought the true cost to the MTA down 0.7 of a point, and those were it was important from our standpoint to accomplish that, because obviously that was what allowed us to fit it in the MTA's financial plan. So thank you for that.
So you've got a sub 4% is what you...
Yes,
okay.
Yes, well under 4%. Okay, I'm going to, because I need to stretch my... So, okay, thanks everybody for joining this month's meeting, and we'll get a screen up there. Okay. This has been a great month for New York, and I'll just remind everybody, not too long ago, we were hearing a lot of concern about the MTA's ability to maintain quality service with the added pressure of all the major events that are going on around the region this summer. You know, some folks actually urged us to tell people to stay home on World Cup days. Remember that? And some said, you got to close Penn Station when the World Cup and the NBA Finals were on the same day. Really, this really happened. Well, suffice it to say, we didn't take that advice. We kept Penn open for the subway, for our Long Island Railroad customers. We even actually, we've staffed it aggressively. Thank you, Dara Goldberg and the whole team, because all the people from New Jersey who are confused and didn't get the message are wandering around in the Long Island Railroad areas looking for how do they get home. We've been key to maintaining service in that key part of our regional system. And on that Saturday, when Knicks Game 5 was on and Brazil was playing Morocco out in New York, New Jersey Stadium, as it's called, subway ridership well in excess of 3 million people. Like way, way more than a normal Saturday, and it all went smoothly. And don't forget, as our friend Demetrius told us on Monday, after the Knicks won that night, the subway carried more people overnight than it normally does on New Year's Eve. And then last Thursday, when the champs paraded through the Canyon of Heroes, we broke ridership records on both commuter railroads. We would have broken it on the subways, but there were a lot of fare gates that were open, as everybody saw. But Long Island Railroad, almost 370,000 riders, the highest weekday total since COVID by a lot, and well over the pre-pandemic benchmark from June 2019. Saturday and Sunday following the Knicks championship, also new records. Same deal on Metro North. Thursday was the first day over 300,000 on Metro North since COVID, and well north of that pre-pandemic benchmark. Incredible stuff. And we've also taken thousands and thousands of people, it hasn't been as noticed, to all the watch parties around the city while the World Cup has been going on, along with the usual jumble of Yankee and Mets games, with the PGA U.S. Open out in Shinnecock. Brother Rob and the Long Island Railroad team have carried thousands and thousands of people out there as well. And it has been a great time to be a New Yorker, and the MTA is in the middle of it all, And we are defying expectations, as this MTA has done again and again, and we're having a lot of fun doing it. So let's keep it going. But what I want to talk about today is what makes it possible for us to excel, which is really increased efficiency. We're on the other side of the state budget, which had some wins, which I'll talk about, and some losses for the MTA. We came through the Long Island Railroad strike, which is all about trying to address the legitimate requests for wage increases in a way that allows service to continue to grow and improve. And the July financial plan is coming up for this board's review at the next board meeting. So it's time we talk about efficiency. For the past 5 years, the defining mission of this board has been to preserve and rebuild mass transit so the New York region could recover from COVID, and we have. New York went from being one of the weaker return-to-work cities in the country to being among the most dynamic on all of the standards: more foot traffic, revived culture and nightlife, and a surging, nation-leading commercial real estate market. If people weren't coming back to the office, companies would not be paying top dollar to move into new space, and that is part of the MTA's tremendous contribution. None of this could have happened without this board's decision to double down, to reject calls to cut service like Philly and Chicago and Dallas and the Bay Area have all been forced to do. Here, we added frequency on 11 subway lines. We increased commuter railroad service on the Long Island by 40%. We created super express services on many Metro North lines where people are coming to the city faster than they have ever done before, and all the while embracing affordability initiatives like City Ticket and Fair Fares. But the hardest part of this mission that we have been pursuing under all of your leadership has been restoring the MTA's fiscal stability. For many years, the MTA actually had the highest farebox recovery ratio in the land. Oh boy, oh boy. Okay. Okay. We had the highest farebox recovery ratio in the country, and fares and tolls accounted for well more than 50% of our cost structure. That model worked well for quite a long time. It made the MTA seem more business-like than most of our peers in the transit industry nationwide. But COVID blew it up. COVID made it non-viable when fares and other revenues collapsed. We needed help from Albany to regain our financial footing, but we had a credibility problem. Deserved or not, the MTA had a reputation for inefficiency, for busted budgets, and going back many years before all of you, for some questionable accounting. We needed to put that reputation behind us so that the governor could come to the rescue, and she did. But we also needed the support of the business community who wanted great transit to get people back to work. They love transit, but needed to be convinced that additional dedicated revenues that they would contribute to would go to service and not down a black hole. So MTA efficiencies were key, both to make the numbers work and to give us credibility to ask for new money. So beginning at the outset of the dialogue in Albany a couple of years ago, we proposed that we would achieve $400 million in efficiencies, that we would take responsibility for 20 to 25% of the total budget gap. Now, that's a pretty incredible thing when you compare it to the way that other branches of government are dealing with budget gaps. We took on responsibility to solve the problem to a great extent. I'm very proud of that. And we delivered. In the years since, we've gone well beyond that $400 million benchmark. This year, we're on track to hit $600 million in annual savings. We've been ratcheting it up, and my friends sitting over there who are run the operating agencies know that they have to and will hit certain levels that have been allocated to them on figuring out how to become more efficient, and they always do. But the number is going to go up to $750 million in the next 2 years. So how do we do it? As you've heard in some of these meetings before, the first phase of our cost savings program found the money through a wide range of improvements, not just by cutting out unnecessary software licenses, some of the low-hanging fruit, and taking away underutilized iPads, though the folks at Strategic Initiatives did actually confiscate my iPad. But you're going to hear more today about what's being done now. You're going to hear from Deputy Chief of Management and Budget, Jake Luce, about the latest efforts to cut costs and increase productivity. I don't want to steal his thunder, but there are a few examples on the screen, and many of them have to do with leveraging technology to bring this agency into the 21st century. The point is that we're doing our part and then some. And thanks to these efforts and to the increased funding we got from the state, thanks to Governor Hochul, with the support of the business community, we've been spending less in real terms than we did before COVID, despite running a ton more service, I keep saying that, and also accounting for the cost of that brand new 700,000 square foot terminal that we operate for the Long Island Railroad in the basement of Grand Central. We call it Grand Central Madison. But we're not likely to be out of the woods anytime soon. No one here needs to be told that inflation continues to drive costs for everybody. The MTA is no different. You see on the screen what's happening to our insurance and our legal claims expenses. You see what's happening to health benefits. These are, huge costs that are well in excess even of our labor cost inflation. And this is why I'm so passionate about finding more ways to save. Developments in Albany, we all know, sometimes increase our costs. Some of those bills, we were talking about it before, with mandated additional training or other edicts from Albany actually hit our budget. But this year provided an important counterexample, which was the insurance reforms that Governor Hochul championed and pushed through. These changes work to reduce the cost of insurance for all car owners, whether they're individuals or businesses, but they're also going to cut down on the opportunities for the billboard lawyers, the torts bar as they're called, to treat the MTA as a piggy bank and to always look for an MTA bus within a half a mile whenever there's a car accident if they can pin responsibility on us and hit the jackpot with a windfall. This could be huge since tort claims, as I showed on the prior slide, and the cost of the insurance that necessary to defend them have been among the fastest growing parts of the MTA budget. Now, next year, we're going to be looking for more help from Albany to deal with the rising cost of toll evasion. There's a bill that we have developed with key legislators that goes after drivers who owe us thousands of dollars in unpaid tolls, sometimes $10,000, $20,000, $30,000, $40,000, $50,000, and tolls which we have no ability right now legally to collect. And and even when we impound cars, people are still permitted to come and re-register the car under their spouse's name or somebody else's name, and then just to take the car back. So even when we invalidate registration because of this excessive, what we call a persistent toll violators, people can find loopholes, and we're trying to address those. There's a bill in Albany that didn't make it through this year, but we very much hope that next year we're going to get those powers. Listen, in today's political and fiscal environment, which is pretty volatile, the MTA has to stay the course financially in order to deliver on our core goal, which is more and better service for our riders. We are not, somebody correct me if I say it wrong, we're not a jobs agency, we're a service agency, and we have to make sure that we are positioned to deliver service more and better every day. In the near term, solutions are not coming from Washington. And that's not just because the feds have exploded the deficit. MTA carries more than 40% of mass transit riders nationwide, but receives only 17% of federal funding. And yet, the current administration continues to look for new ways to mess with our share. Even convincing them to deliver the funding that they've already pledged to us has been a challenge, and we've had to take them to court over it, and we've won. But all that drama just underscores the key point, which, at least for now, Washington is not coming to riders' rescue. And there are plenty of other folks right here at home who benefit from the old status quo, who oppose modernization at all costs, who cling to the 19th century work rules that serve no purpose other than to soak the riders, the taxpayers, financially in favor of a few lucky folks who are the overtime hogs. The folks who tell New Yorkers with a straight face that they have to choose between quality service, efficiency, and 21st century transit management. We reject that choice. This MTA is embracing innovation, embracing new ideas, embracing technology, embracing new solutions, and we're going to have to continue to do so. We're going to defy expectations, and we're always going to have fun while we're doing it. So with that, let me turn it over to Jake Luce for that presentation on some of the current efficiency efforts. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Lieber. Good morning, members of the board. So my name's Jake Luce. I'm the Deputy Chief at MTA Finance, responsible for the Office of Management and Budget. OMB's role at MTA is not just estimating what our revenues and expenses are likely to be. We also help shape those outcomes. And a cornerstone of that effort is the MTA's Operating Efficiencies Program. I'm proud to share with you today why this program is critical to the MTA's success at a challenging time financially for the transit industry. And I'm also looking forward to shining a spotlight on good work taking place across the MTA under the direction of the leaders around this table. It's tough times to be a public transit agency in America. I won't belabor these points because they're familiar to many on this board, and we see many of these themes playing out in the region. But years after the COVID pandemic, ridership hasn't recovered, fare box revenues haven't recovered, and central business districts around the country are often struggling, which means less money in real estate taxes to support public transit. At the same time that revenues are depressed, costs are going up in core cost elements for a transit operation, things like healthcare premiums for employees, retirees, and their families, electricity to run trains, most recently, fuel price spikes that affect buses, the torch costs that the chair talked about, the materials that are necessary to repair tracks and keep rolling stock in good working order. All those costs are rising up, and they're rising much faster than general inflation for consumer prices and wages. Those twin pressures have meant huge operating deficits that public transit agencies have been facing. And the federal government had stepped in with elevated levels of operating support, but those funds have sunset, leaving transit agencies alone to face these challenges. As a result, we see sister agencies that are making difficult choices. They're having to make double-digit fare hikes. Across the river in New Jersey, they had to raise fares 15%, followed by 3% every year in perpetuity. The next fare hike is scheduled to go into effect next week on July 1st. We've seen reductions in capital investments. SEPTA was forced to shift $394 million away from capital investments they had planned to make in order to plug holes in their operating budget and stave off devastating 20% service cuts. But that plug is only going to last for about 2 years, giving them a little bit of time to address these structural deficits, but not a lot. And some agencies have had to go through with service cuts. We've seen DART have to eliminate bus routes and have to expand peak headways from 15 minutes to 20 minutes, meaning less service for riders every day. So how has the MTA responded? Rather than cut service, we've expanded it, attracting riders back to the system. Fares have gone up, trying to keep up with the pace of inflation, but increases have been predictable and modest to retain affordability. And as the chair noted, we've worked with Governor Hochul and our partners in government to secure new sources of subsidies. But we've only been able to do that because we have shown that we are a cost-conscious agency that is making sure every dollar that is spent is money well spent. The Operating Efficiencies Program has been core to that, with $500 million in savings that we committed to in order to receive the additional sources of subsidy from Albany. But then we took it on ourselves to grow that further, and in the most recent financial plan, laid out steps to ramp that up another $250 million, growing to a total of $750 million in recurring savings by 2029. And I won't go back over these points that the chair's made, but we've done that by delivering better service, more reliable service, more accessible service, and all of this within the envelope of an operating budget that is lower in real dollars than before the pandemic. The way we've been able to do that, the way we've been able to increase our investment in service is by aggressively controlling costs elsewhere in our budget. So this is what that looks like by the numbers, where you see the growth every year from 2023 up through the last year of 2025, where we achieved that initial $500 million target, and growing each year through 2029. Cumulatively, because these are annually recurring savings, by 2029, the Operating Efficiencies Program will have delivered $3.7 billion in value. And this is not your typical government efficiencies program. This is not top-down mandates, hiring freezes, one-shot solutions that don't create sustainable change. OMB, working with strategic initiatives, has partnered with the executives that are around the table, deploying dedicated resources to help pinpoint opportunities and drive sustainable change, often in places where we can get more productive, not only saving money, but improving results in ways that matter to riders, like increased reliability for our service. All this is not just ideas. We make sure there's follow-through with rigorous program management and recurring briefings with the chair, so that we're taking a look at what did we say we wanted to do, have we been able to do it, what obstacles have we encountered, what risks are around the corner, and how do we get ahead of that? So these aren't just numbers on the page that then don't come to fruition, but these are commitments that we follow through on. Now, I'd like to turn to some examples from the past. I know we've got some new board members, so allow me to tick off some of these success stories. But we're not resting on our laurels, so then I'd like to turn to some of the work that's underway right now across the MTA. So there were 4 strategies that underpinned the first phase of this program. 1, harnessing technology and data to improve productivity. We tailored maintenance intervals, looking at which assets were failing when, in order to give more preventative maintenance to high-risk assets and spend less time and money on assets that were not prone to failures. We were able to reduce costs and improve reliability. We've right-sized the emergency response capacity when there is an issue to make sure we get service back up and running as quickly as possible. And we've optimized scheduling and onboard staffing. 2, sharpening focus on cost drivers. We looked at where we had contract expenditures that we felt we could do more efficiently in-house, and we brought them in-house, creating hundreds of jobs. We improved employee availability so that every year, every employee is coming to work a few more days per year. We got a lot more work to do on that. I'll talk about that in a little bit. And as Jano mentioned, we're taking a look at all of our expenses and cutting back on things like software licenses and devices that are underutilized. 3, developing common standards and work practices. Making sure that specific tasks have clear expectations on how much time they should take to ensure we're getting adequate productivity. Regularly auditing our utility costs to make sure that those are under control, and optimizing track access to make sure that maintenance work is done as efficiently as possible. And 4th, we've made upfront investment in order to reduce operating expenses. Sometimes you got to spend money in order to save money, which is why we've invested in LED conversions, which provide better light, require less energy, and last longer. I remember the first time I stepped out of a subway car in a station that had been converted to LEDs, and I thought I'd gotten off at the wrong stop. So kudos to Demetrius and David Solomon and the team that delivered this program across hundreds of thousands of light bulbs ahead of schedule. But enough of looking back at past accomplishments. Allow me to share with you some examples of what MTA agencies have underway as we speak. At the Long Island Railroad, one focus has been on the periodic inspections of the electric fleet that occur every 92 days. These routine inspections follow routines, but those are often handed to us by car manufacturers along with the new car. So under Rob's direction, John Stoltz and the maintenance of equipment team have been painstakingly looking at these routines to figure out how do we need to tailor them for the reality of our shops? How do we need to update them when we've replaced components on the cars that they didn't come with? So some components are behind the same panel, but the routines that came from the manufacturer didn't always have those tasks performed at the same time. But it's more efficient when you open up that panel in the car to check all the components that are behind that panel. Or we've got LEDs on the rolling stock now, Those last longer, like I mentioned before, which is part of the reason we prioritized the investment in LED conversions, and then they take less time to maintain, but we had to update our maintenance schedules to reflect that fact. So all of these little things add up to the tune of $5 million per year in improved efficiencies for these routine inspections. At Metro North, they're taking on the challenge of materials management. Excuse me. So for a transit organization, materials management is a high-stakes balancing act. If you order too much too soon, you tie up working capital and risk obsolescence of that material. But if you don't order enough, then you end up with trains and buses that are held out of service waiting for the parts necessary to put them back into service. Metro North is partnering with an AI-focused startup through the Transit Tech Lab, which is a program of the Partnership for New York City that pairs promising tech startups with transit agencies to help us address our problems. This software consumes massive amounts of data across thousands of shopkeeping units, developing a custom forecast for each based on current inventory levels, past consumption patterns, and predicted lead times for replenishment. You can see an example of just one of these shopkeeping units on the screen, but this is across thousands and thousands that are part of our inventory to keep the trains running. By enabling data-driven purchasing decisions, Metro North has been able to reduce its cash budget by $1 million per year, while at the same time decreasing stockout rates by 22%. What that means is our maintenance workers have the right materials in their hands at the right time so they can do their job as productively as possible and get trains back out into service, serving riders. Big kudos to Justin, big kudos to Chad Scholes, who leads the innovation team at Metro North for this great work, and working with procurement, taking the same approach and bringing it across the MTA so that we can get better at managing this critical aspect of our business. At Bridges and Tunnels, they're using video analytics to identify defaced license plates, match them to owners, and issuing violations. So let me share a little bit about how this works. So you can see on the screen some examples of what some unscrupulous drivers have tried to do. The example on the left shows a 3 on the license plate. Someone has drawn a line through it to make it look like an 8. The one on the right is a 1 that someone has obscured. So they thought they were going to fool us, but they have not fooled the team at Bridges and Tunnels. Kathy Sheridan and Sergio Reese are getting one step ahead of them using video analytics that identifies the obscured or defaced digits, then takes the non-obscured digits, works with the DMV to match those to other known license plates, and then where we see a match on the make and the model of the car, we're able to identify who owns that vehicle, send them a bill, letting them know, nice try, you owe us money, and if you keep defacing or obscuring your license plate, your registration may get suspended. Keeping water out of the subway systems is a daily challenge. The infrastructure team at Subways pumps out over 13 million gallons of water every day on a dry day. This is critical because water is not the friend of our physical infrastructure, our rails, and our electric signaling equipment. The challenge of keeping water out of our subway tunnels is a challenge that goes back to the original excavations. Unfortunately, some of our pumping systems also go back almost that far. The bottom right shows a map of the 80 miles of airlines that stretch throughout the system, and this map was hand-drawn in 1921. So we still have many of these pneumatic pumps, which were probably state-of-the-art at the time, which are helping pump water out of the system. But these pneumatic pumps are failure-prone and expensive to maintain. The good news is that now we have electric submersible pumps available, and Subways is working to replace the antiquated pneumatic systems to keep water out of the system and lower our maintenance costs with more reliable equipment. Bus is working on reducing collisions with AI-enabled cameras. This is not just a safety issue. As the chair pointed out, this is a huge cost issue because historically, even if it has not been the bus operator's fault, we have still been liable for huge settlements. So driving buses along dense and unpredictable New York streets means navigating cars, pedestrians, cyclists, delivery drivers, electric scooters, just to name a few. To reduce collisions, Sunil Nair and the bus tech team have spearheaded new technology including side sensors, driver alerts, and forward-facing cameras. Together, these identify and calculate the trajectory of objects on the street and alert the driver so they can avoid a collision. As a result, 25% fewer collisions, 43% fewer preventable collisions. But for systems designed to help bus operators, the key factor is the bus operator. 80% of our bus operators involved in this pilot report that they felt better behind the wheel armed with this technology. This was a small-scale pilot, but based on the success, Transit is looking to scale it up aggressively, not only retrofitting existing buses with this technology, but working with manufacturers so that similar technology comes standard on the new buses that we're purchasing. Finally, this is not just the operating agencies. This is an effort that is taking place across the MTA, including support from shared services departments like IT and people and procurement and finance. As the board is aware, for many years, productive employee days have been steadily eroded, with a rise in days lost to workers' compensation, sick leave, and call-outs under the Federal Family and Medical Leave Act. These programs are designed to provide flexibility and income support for people who need it, but unfortunately, sometimes they are being abused. Transit has made reversing this decades-long trend of declining availability a centerpiece of its efforts to improve efficiency and the reliability of its service, and it's made significant progress to the tune of an improvement of 4 days per employee per year. Analyzing the data on sick leave shows that it's not that every employee is showing up a little bit less. Many employees maintain stellar attendance records year in and year out, showing up to work to keep New York moving. But where we are seeing declines is in the worst attending segments of our workforce. So under the terms of some collective bargaining agreements, the bottom 30th percentile of employees are subject to home visits to confirm that when they call and say that they can't do their run, they can't do their job that day because they're homesick, we make sure they really are. So these employees, the ones who are in the bottom 30th percentile, take an average of 28 sick days annually. That's more than double the number of allowable sick days in their collective bargaining agreement. So to keep up with the challenge of protecting against waste, fraud, and abuse, there's a team of home inspectors that we need to make sure are as productive as possible. So Transit and Labor Relations have been working on improving the process for inspections and discipline. Rather than records being faxed, as they used to be historically, now inspectors get electronic records that allow them to spend less time parsing paper records and more time knocking on doors. 32% more visits are conducted each day, and because electronic data makes it easier to prioritize and plan, each visit is 25% more likely to result in a disciplinary action for someone who claimed they were homesick but weren't. There is a long way to go. Home visits are just one element in a broad effort to reverse the downward trend in employee availability that started well before the pandemic. This isn't just an issue that affects costs when we have to backfill a shift on overtime. Too often, there are bus and train trips that are canceled even though we have a vehicle ready to go because we didn't have an operator available to operate that vehicle in revenue service. That's why Transit, with support from MTA Shared Services, is determined to continue the progress they have made improving employee availability. Thank you for providing the chance to celebrate some of these successes. OMB coordinates this MTA-wide program, but the heavy lifting is done by leaders throughout the agency who are doing the hard work to make these changes real and sustainable. The MTA has not sat back. We have taken control of our destiny in challenging financial times for the transit industry. The operating efficiencies is one element of this program, which collectively has balanced the current year budget, controlled out-year deficits, which are less than 1% of our total operating budget, improved our credit rating, and increased confidence that every dollar spent on public transit is money well spent. Thank you.
Great presentation. Thank you, Jake. And again, just to underscore it, Jake is doing the presentation, but look across the dais at the folks who are leading the operating agencies, because they're the ones who are doing the work that Jake was reporting on. So thank you, Demetrius. Thank you, Rob. Thank you, Justin. Thank you, Kathy. for what you have contributed, and all the headquarters chiefs who are now getting a chunk of that allocation of savings that they must hit in the second phase of this efficiency program. So thank you. Any questions or comments? Mr. Zuckerman.
A few remarks, mostly from my perspective as a guy who does a lot of efficiency work for clients. I've probably spent the last 25 years, half of my time doing cost cutting for large corporations. And a few things. First of all, absolutely, Jake, great presentation. Your passion and fervor for it helps a lot. And this is a great team that, Jano, you have built. The fact that all the operating agencies are behind you and working through this is a big deal. Next, this is very real world. You've accepted what you can control and what you can't control. When we came out of executive session, we had a whole discussion about what we are obliged to do on on wages, excuse me, a little slip there, on wages, and you're controlling what you can control, but it's also very business-oriented, it's data-driven. Everything you showed up there makes perfect sense, and I think it's mostly important for the public to know that we're being deep stewards of their money. I've been on this board a long time, and we've had many eras where we've said we've pulled savings, but I have not seen a conversation where we've taken very specific initiatives and worked through how to actually drive savings out of them in that way. It usually has been, as you said, Jake, top-down and government-like. And the last thing I'd just say is it's a JFK quote from his inauguration, which I never thought I'd think about this for our own internal work, but the phrase "sincerity is always subject to proof" comes to mind for those who remember when we were discussing nuclear arms agreements with the Soviet Union. I didn't think we'd have to be doing that with our own employees, but if you given the data you showed, you had a 31% increase in home visits, and you had a 71% increase in those who were cheating effectively. And so if you're going to get that kind of return, keep doing it, because I think it shows that, unfortunately, we do have to check. And that is, in that list, at least of that one particular area, this individual board member was a little horrified by what you found. So thank you, Jake. Thanks for that work.
Anybody else wishing to comment? Mr. Jones?
Yes, I want to join Neil, and I've been on this board now 11 years. It doesn't seem like that. And the difference in terms of how improved, first of all, the nature of the discussion is, and the kind of improvement in terms of our outlook and looking forward is really palpable for someone who's been through a lot now. But I would like to ask a favor of the board and the chair. I think the public deserves some understanding of the Penn Station issue that you're able to do without violating.
We're still on the budget, Mr. Jones.
Okay. I'm sorry, I jumped the gun. But I think there's a lot of interest in the public, in the press, and of course in the board in your position.
We'll come back to that, but I just want to make sure that this is the special, as we say, this is the special presentation for today. I want to make sure that any board members who want to comment on and talk about it. Ms. Hartzog, welcome.
Thank you, and thanks for giving some of the background on what you have accomplished. I'm just curious, and very impressive on the reoccurring as the former budget director. Those are very hard to find, whereas one-shots are really easy. But I'm curious as to where you go from there to achieve some of the targets that you're looking at. And then I think, there's always the bigger challenges. I have this in my old job and in my current job, which is health insurance is one of the big areas. And if there's any thought that's happening there, and obviously you need labor to be with you on that.
I'll just tell you a fact that has been a topic of some conversation in our preparation for labor negotiations. 20 years ago, when there was a settlement of the last strike, an illegal strike, with our major partners at the TW Local 100, there was the health insurance agreement projected that the cost of health insurance, 11%, I think, would be paid for by the employees. And over time, a series of agreements and other factors, that number is now down to 5%. So the division of costs between management and labor on health insurance has eroded dramatically in an environment where, as we all know, health insurance costs have been going up. So it's one of the issues that we are talking to our labor partners about as part of these very important negotiations that are underway episodically, but still underway. That's a big issue. And Jay, do you want to say something else?
Yes. Thank you for your question. I think what we're doing is methodically looking at operating efficiencies, and the next sort of efficiency target that we've worked with the operating agencies to achieve. So in the July financial plan, which you'll see next month, we'll introduce the next $75 million of efficiency initiatives that both OMB, Finance, strategic initiatives works with the operating agency. So we go through and identify new initiatives that will add reductions to the budget. We'll talk about that. But during the year, what we do is really work with the operating agencies to sit down, talk about where we want to invest money for a return, as Jake highlighted, but also what we see could be a new way of looking at old business. And so we're constantly on a quarterly basis, even sometimes monthly, meeting with each of the operating agencies to talk about this. This is sort of in our DNA now, right? This is not something that is one and done for us. We are constantly talking about it. We're reporting on it. Are we achieving those savings? Because we don't want to just put an initiative in the budget and then forget about it. We want to monitor it, make sure it's saving. If it's not saving what we identified, we go back and talk about a new initiative that will replace the old one. So it's something that is ongoing, and I think for us, it's the future of the MTA, I would say.
And just to be clear about it, if we don't hit the targets, we take slots. We actually eliminate vacancies in jobs, which is not the best approach, but that's the one, usually that's been the default setting of MTA's past, just to say, well, we're sweeping all the vacancies and you lost those jobs and that's why we're saving money. We would rather let people do savings in a way that makes sense and that actually delivers efficiency rather than just eliminating jobs irrespective of the impact on service. So, but that's the default setting if you don't hit the numbers. Other questions or comments? Okay. Mr. Jones, back to you for.
For jumping the
No,
gun.
no, it's okay. We understand there's interest. Yeah.
So I think we've seen very news coverage of the nature of the dispute with on Penn Station.
Yeah.
And we'd like the chair's position on this to be presented not only to us as a board, but to the public.
Okay. So just to be very simple about it, we are happy and thrilled to engage with the federal government on the redesign and reimagining of Penn Station, full stop. The disagreement is pretty simple, which is we have a lease. We are 60 to 70% of all the riders in Penn Station. We have a lease that has not 160 odd years left on it that says you can't come into our house and make changes without our approval. That's what you want when you're a tenant. You don't want somebody to come into your house, your apartment, your landlord, and come and tear it up at his own initiative. What has been offered to us by the team that is operating this new initiative to fix Penn, and again, we're agnostic on the design, but we got to know it's not going to hurt the Long Island Railroad and subway customers. They've offered us, instead of that right that we have, they said, we want to change your rights. We want you to be on a collaboration committee and a non-voting member, and that you can comment on our design, but in the end, we, Amtrak, get to decide unilaterally. That's not a real, we're not going to agree to that. But we are very much open. They don't have to, there's no reason they need a new agreement. We have our rights. We're the tenant. Just give us the drawings and the engineering and all of that, and we will be happy to comment on it. But we're going to protect the rights to make sure that it doesn't disrupt service either in the ultimate finished product, but even during construction, because we don't want our very hard-won success. Long Island Railroad riders who come to Penn, now are up to 80% in saying it's good service. Customer satisfaction is up to 80% roughly. We're not going to take a chance that we're going to lose ground and have people go back to being half of them unhappy with the service because somebody wants to tear up the Long Island Railroad area. But that said, we're happy to work with them. And the other proviso is that as the governor has said, is New York's not paying for this. This is a federally owned facility that they haven't invested in. We actually have invested in. And the governor said, New York's not paying for this. And the agreement that they sent us also said we will support their efforts to get state and city financing. That's the non-starter based on our leadership in Albany. So those are the two issues. It's pretty straightforward. I understand that Amtrak's on a PR binge, but what they offered us, they're pulling a bit of a fast one. They keep saying that they're offering us "quote unquote" full partnership. That was not the right of being a partnership. That was the right of being a tenant at will that they could do anything to at any time they wanted, and basically just kick us out and take over our space. And we're not going to agree to that. So although Andy Byford is a much-loved former member of the MTA family, I'm afraid that I'm declining to be the first person in New York real estate history to say I want to enter into a real estate deal with Donald Trump and with no lease and no protections and just take a bet, roll the dice. We can't do that for our New York riders. Okay. Anything else? And again, at your request and others' request, we provided to the board with the relevant documents because there's been back and forth that has been reported in the press. Again, Amtrak's on a PR binge, so we've shared those documents with the board. Anything else that anybody wants to say? All right. Switching from Mr. Herbst.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to thank you for defending the Long Island ridership to continue the service that they are receiving and keep your position and protecting them. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Herbst. I have to change the tone a little bit here. I think last week we lost somebody who is really a beloved member of the MTA family, of the New York transit community. Chris Silvera, who represented the Teamsters at Metro North, who's was somebody that many of us have worked with for a long, long time, especially Anita and the other members of the labor relations team. And Chris Leathers is going to say a few words about Chris Silvera.
Good morning, Chair. I had mentioned my words during the committee meeting.
You did, and I apologize if we got it wrong. But I just refer everybody back to, we'll circulate your comments because Chris Silvera really was an important part of this transit community. So thank you for leading the memorialization of him. There's the services, we've circulated to the board and others, the schedule for the services. Okay. Back on to routine business, if you guys will indulge us. The minutes of the May joint board and committee meeting have been distributed. Corrections or omissions? Okay, thumbs up from Mr. Albert. There were some corrections that were done at the committee level, and they've been redistributed. Therefore, are approved. Moving on to the committee reports. Mr. O'Donnell, are you prepared to report for bridges and tunnels? We've lost.
I am.
Okay.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair. The TBTA committee met Monday and reports the following. The committee seeks approval to award a personal service contract to Gannett Fleming Engineers and Architects for EasyPass interoperability consultant services in the not-to-exceed amount of $5.47 million over a period of 6 years. The committee discussed the item. However, a quorum of members was not present. The action is brought to the full board today, and I move it.
All right, may I have a second? Any second. Mr. Zuckerman. All in favor? Any opposition or abstention? The item is approved.
Mr. Chair, this concludes the TBTA committee report.
Mr. Herbst, will you do joint railroad in Mr. Chu's absence?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Joint Railroad Committee met on Monday and reports the following. There was one competitive procurement. The railroads seek board approval to use an expedited change order procedure for the M98 railcar procurement with Alstom Transportation. The committee recommends this procurement, and I move it.
Okay, I think, discussed this in joint railroad. May I have a second? Thank you. Ms. Lopez, any comments? All in favor? Any opposition or abstention? The item is carried.
Mr. Chairman, there is one ratification for board approval. The Long Island Railroad, on behalf of the MTA Grand Central Madison Operating Company, requests board approval for a retroactive modification of the contract with George S. Hall in the amount of $2.86 million for additional scopes of work. The committee recommends this procurement, and I move it.
Okay. A second by Mr. Jones. All in favor? Any opposition or abstention? The item is carried.
Thank you. This concludes the Joint Railroad Committee report.
Thank you, Mr. Herbst. Ms. Mahaltzis, Transit Committee.
Good morning, everyone. The New York City Transit Committee met on Monday and reports the following. There are 3 competitive procurements totaling $514.4 million. The first procurement is authorizing a competitive RFP for the procurement of up to 1,488 buses. The second item is a contract with the Goodyear Tire and Rubber Company in the amount of $165.6 million to furnish, lease, and service our bus tires. And the final item is a modification to extend personal service contracts with Arno, CTG, Sentry, and Islander totaling $348.8 million. The committee recommends these procurements, and I move them.
Big numbers,
Very big numbers. This concludes the New York City Transit Committee report.
Thank you, Mr. Garaddi.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Capital Committee met on Monday. We discussed matters relating to rolling stock, diversity, and the development of the Small Business Mentoring Program. We don't have items that require a board vote this month, and that's all we have for today.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Garaddi. Finance Committee, Mr. Zucker.
Thank you, sir. The Finance Committee met Monday afternoon, reports the following. There is one action for board approval. We request to authorize actions related to the payment of the New York State assessment on the MTA and its constituent agencies for the Public Work Enforcement Fund for this calendar year. The committee recommends this action item, and I move it.
Second. Thank you, Mr. Herbst. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposition or abstention? Item carried.
Thank you. There are 2 competitive procurements for $119 million. The committee recommends these procurements, and I move them.
Mr. Herbst again, thank you. All in favor? Any opposition or abstention? Items carried.
Finally, we have 3 real estate action items this month. The committee recommends these items, and I move them.
Second, Mr. Herbst on a troika. All in favor? Any opposition or abstention? Items carried again.
So ends the Finance Committee report, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Diversity Committee met on Monday and discussed an accessibility program update, MTA-wide EEO activities, and 2026 small business development activity. None of these matters require a vote.
Well, thank you for chairing, and I know there was a good discussion at diversity, so thank you again.
Thank you.
We're at the moment of adjournment. I'm going to close not by making a motion, but just by saying an acknowledgement of the fact I should have done at the outset. David Mack, who served on this board for a very long time, and who all of us got to know in part because he would sit next to us and chatter during the board meeting, has left the board. And I just want to acknowledge that he was, he and I had some disagreements, but he was always a cheerful and positive member, and somebody who serves the MTA that long deserves to be acknowledged. So tip of the hat to David Mack. Mr. O'Donnell.
Thank you, Chairman. I think I'm the only person that actually worked in a position with David. So I met him 30 years ago. He was appointed a colonel in the state police by Governor Pataki. I had the pleasure of getting to know him quite well during our time together on the state police. But we all know his generous and work he's done, not only with the MTA board for over 20-something years, but also Northwell Health, which is the largest health agency in New York City. We all see the ambulances with David and Sandra Mack on the side. So he's going to continue that work with his philanthropy and his generosity. He not only had a wealth of information that he shared with all of us. I know, Mark, you said he was a mentor to you. He's been a mentor to me and others here. We're certainly going to miss him. I actually hope he gets back on this board. There's enough former New Yorkers, rich people in Florida. He doesn't have to become another one. Hopefully he comes back, but I wish him all the best, and he continues to be a good friend. So thank you, Chairman.
Okay. So in summing up Mr. Mack's spirit, I'll move for adjournment. May I have a second? Thank you. We're on adjournment. Thanks. Attention all Mintons. Okay. Tim, we're starting.
Yes, sir. Do you have opening remarks? Sometimes you have things you want to say.
Okay. Good board meeting today. Between the end of the legislative session and the July plan, this was a moment to talk about how we are pushing forward to become more efficient and make sure that we can deliver service, more service, better service without having budget problems. So I was thrilled at that. We had a really good discussion on that. That's what I have to say.
Amazing start to the proceedings. We're going to go to Evan Simcoe Bednarski of your New York Daily News. Everybody, Evan.
See, I last time I said he shouldn't make you last, and see, he's making a point at me.
This makes me very uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So, I want to ask you about the Penn Station tete-a-tete.
Oh, goody.
Andy Byford said in his letter, forgive me, I think the exact words were that the MOA would not water down the lease claims that LIRR has. Yeah. You've made the point today and in the letter that in the eyes of the MTA it does. Can you give me a bit more of a sense of, sort of what specific rights are they asking for?
All right. This is all sort of beside the point. Let's put it in regular New Yorker terms. You got a lease. It says that the landlord can't tear up your house or apartment without your approval. The landlord shows up and he says, I got a different lease for you. How about a lease that says, I will talk to you about my plan for your apartment, but in the end, I get to decide if I tear it up. That's what was offered to us. It's simple. We have a 160-year left on our ironclad lease. They offered us the right to be an at-will employee of Donald Trump's. I'm not sure that's the deal that makes sense for New York. I think New Yorkers get it. We don't need to be talking about what's in or not in the agreement. We have a lease. It gives us certain rights. We have to make sure that what they're proposing to do helps Long Island Railroad. Now, I am very interested in collaborating with Byford and Amtrak and everybody else on a plan to improve Penn. That's, we're interested in improving Penn. That's why we built the 33rd Street Concourse, and on time and on budget, as I always remind people. But there's no need for a new agreement. We have our rights. We're not changing it. Just give us the documents and let us start to collaborate. We can collaborate right now. We don't need a new document. It's that simple. But we're interested in working with them, especially since they keep saying, or the governor's made very clear that New York isn't paying for this, so we don't have to worry about the financing. They say they're going to solve it all because the governor's been pretty clear we're not paying. New York State isn't paying. New York taxpayers aren't paying. The New York riders aren't paying. So we're interested in collaborating, but we don't need to negotiate a new document for the privilege of doing so.
All right, let's move on. Sir, we're going to the Zoom equipment where Stefanos Chen is standing by from the New York Times. Stefanos.
Yeah.
Hi, Jano. Can you guys hear and see me?
Yes.
Hi. So I understand that last week Governor Hochul had met with Amtrak and the developers to see a model of the plan, walked through it, and at least seemed receptive to the idea. But your letter on Monday seemed to show that there may be some sunlight between you, the MTA, and the governor's office on whether or not to proceed with this plan. Would you just speak, please, to whether you are on the same page with Governor Hochul on the proposal that the Trump administration is putting forward, or if there's something else that if there's some space between you two?
Listen, I don't think there is. The governor said a couple things that I very much agree with. One, as she said from the get-go, this plan is premised for us very clearly. New York is not paying for it. This is a federally owned facility that has been allowed to fall apart for generations. The MTA is the only ones who's invested in it to make it a lot better, and the result of that investment has raised rider satisfaction among our Long Island Railroad customers from 50 to 80%. So we've been investing in it. It's the federal government's responsibility. The governor's made that clear. I very much agree with her on that. I very much agree with her that we can and should partner and collaborate and work with them on their ideas, which I haven't been, no one's shared those with us. I'm glad that she had an opportunity to see it if she did. So we're ready to collaborate. We just don't need a brand new agreement that eviscerates key rights that we have in our lease in order to do it. Just send us the plans, brief us. We will give you your feedback. And as the governor said, we're ready to work collaboratively.
All right, next up straight in front of you is Andrew Siff of WNBC. He's here with Justin Laub today. Andrew.
How are you? Can you just explain, it feels like there's the stuff that's said in the letters, like Andy's letter to you and your letter back to Andy, and then there's the real stuff. It feels like some secret fight that New Yorkers don't fully understand. Amtrak owns Penn Station. They have a plan to renovate it. You're saying we don't like this plan because we haven't fully seen it. Can you better explain why it can't just move forward as proposed?
Well, I think it can move forward. Just show us the plans and let us comment on them and tell you what we think of them so we can fulfill our responsibility to protect Long Island Railroad riders. We don't only have the right to occupy half of the station. We also have in our lease the right of what you call quiet enjoyment, means you cannot impact on our operation. So we have to understand what they're proposing to do, how it might, even if they're working in another part of the station, how it could impact on our ability to put on service. So Andrew, it's very simple, which is we're ready to collaborate. Just give us the plans, start briefing us, bring us into it. Don't make it conditional on us signing some document that, that gives away a bunch of really rock solid rights. I mean, remember, the Trump administration has done things to us even when we had contracts, even when we had very clear-cut rights. Second Avenue subway funding was withheld, although we had a contract. The contract that was the approval from the federal government for congestion pricing was not respected. So the idea that we should give away rock-solid rights in favor of a hope and a lick and a promise, a hope and a prayer of that they might agree to do what we think are the important things to do is not realistic. We're not doing it. It's not happening. We're very simple. Just give us the documents. Let's start the dialogue. Let's collaborate.
All right, next up, let's go to the joy of Nickstown with Dave Colon of Streets Blog. Bring us up, uplift us. New Yorkers coming together.
I think the phrase for all that Knicks gear is superannuated, right? It's a week too late, but keep going, David. Yeah.
Oh no, this is all summer.
Yeah. Okay. Good.
I have a shirt in the mail. I got more shirts I'm going to find. This is the Knicks are champs until they're not.
Yeah, live it. You know what? I take it all back. Enjoy.
I know. A Nets fan here telling me.
Hey, Dave. Let's go have a beer and talk about all the games I went to in 1969, 70, and 73. Okay, then you can accuse me of not being a Knicks fan.
That's fair. I'll talk ball with you sometime. But for now, I have not Penn Station questions. I'm zagging while all the colleagues are zigging. I was very interested in Jesse's presentation to the board on Monday, or to the Capital Committee on Monday, all of this stuff about the rolling stock and the completely hollowed out bus and train building capabilities in America. So I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit more, or if Jesse can talk a little bit more about what is kind of the plan. Is there a plan with Albany to try to get people here? Is there a plan to move away from Buy America, if you can do that? Is there, what more can we hear about these rolling stock issues to ensure, especially on the bus side, that there are buses available for people?
Okay, so I'll say a couple things, and then Jesse will add much more. A couple things. This is not a new issue. We've been working on this for a while. In the Rich Davey era, we were very active with APTA in the national transit community in trying to get alignment on specifications and standards among all the bus buyers, so that we would get companies to come and work here so they knew they didn't have to create bespoke, customized buses for every customer, right? We were working with APTA on attracting more bus manufacturers to come to the United States. We at the MTA have been trying to get more companies to come in and let us certify that they could be manufacturers of buses for us. Jessie, as she can describe to you, has been reaching out to some of those bus manufacturers that are active in Europe and elsewhere to see if they would come to the United States. On the Buy America front, one of the things that we're not talking about changing Buy America, but what we think ought to be done is to recognize that because of the component, because buses and subway cars are comprised of all these different components, they shouldn't tariff. If somebody's manufacturing a bus and assembling a bus or a subway car in the United States, they shouldn't be tariffing every single component that's brought here in order to assemble it or manufacture it here. That the fact that there's a manufacturing facility here is kind of the achievement of the industrial policy that the federal government is pushing for. So we're pushing on a lot of different fronts to grow manufacturing capacity, to grow competition. And I'll just add, the only foreign trip that I've made in my career at the MTA was to Korea and Japan to go, talk to potential manufacturers and suppliers about coming to the United States and doing more work here for the MTA. We're the biggest customer there is, and we want to grow competition. Sort of the point that you're making, Jessie.
Thanks. I think that's a great answer. There's a few specifics I'd add. I think about the bus industry and the rail car industry is very distinct. On the bus industry, the challenges are really about the consolidation in the OEM, the sort of higher manufacturer side. That's where we'll be able to hopefully use the MTA's scale and some of the funding flexibility that we have through the capital plan now being fully funded to help bring new players from abroad into hopefully New York State so that we can support bigger purchases and also some of the component parts that are highly specialized. Batteries, for instance. There are great battery suppliers and manufacturers abroad. Those don't exist. So just because you bring the bus company doesn't mean you have the supplier ecosystem to support the development and the manufacturing of those buses. In America, you need all of it. On the rail car side, we have a decent number of sort of system integrators, the main manufacturers. What we're observing, though, is that the consolidation and the roll-up or rapid acquisition of many of the subsystems and sub-suppliers is what's constraining the market here. And so I think the focus there, slightly nuanced, is still about thinking about how we can bring new sub-suppliers and subsystem manufacturers to the U.S. to support those Buy America goals. And again, we can do that with some of the local funding flexibility we have, but thinking about how that can generate sort of a better pricing, better competition overall. The thing that we have to do is be open to some service-proven technologies that work well elsewhere but don't currently exist in the United States. And that is, I think, part of that chicken and an egg cycle that our office is taking a very close look at in partnership with the operating agencies and the engineers there to make sure that if there's a way we could bring some of the new technologies to the United States, we would certainly be a great first mover to do that, and we can help introduce them here.
All right, thank you. Next up is Kevin Vesey from News 12, Long Island. He is here in person. Kevin.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chairman. On the labor agreement that was approved today, those unions are doing a bit of a victory lap. They're saying that there are no concessions in the new agreement. You mentioned some offsets to bring the number in year 4 down. Can you explain what those offsets are? In other words, how are you going to pay for these raises?
Well, the value of these, the cost to the MTA, as I said, is 0.7 of a point less than the than the wage increase itself. And that was accomplished by having a longer agreement, by having an agreement on that they would do the computer-based training on their own time, on straight time, rather than requiring us to bring them into training rooms so that you have to backfill those workers on overtime. So all of those savings and others added up to 0.7 of a point, and we stood our ground to make sure that we were well under 4% in the ultimate cost of the MTA.
All right, let's move on to Alfonso Castillo from Long Island's own Newsday. Maybe another question about how the MTA stood its ground. Alfonso.
Yes, hi, Jano. Indeed. So on that point, as I understand it, and correct me if I'm wrong, the contours of the final settlement were in place before the strike deadline on Friday, the 4.5 in the final year. So is that to say that the strike was basically over that 0.7 of a percent?
I think we had other issues that were still being debated. I don't remember the specifics, but in the end, 0.7 of a percent is real money. 0.7 of a point is real money. It's hundreds of millions of dollars spread across the MTA. So, yeah, we were definitely standing our ground to make sure that the real cost to the MTA was one that we could manage, and we accomplished that.
And then a follow-up, now looking back, this was a labor dispute over more than 3 years, the first LIR strike in more than 3 decades. Now looking back and also looking ahead, that you got to work with these unions. What have you learned? What could you say about how this whole experience went?
You're taking me back to Ben and the psychoanalysis of if those of our friends who remember that. Listen, I learned that the state of New York, led by Governor Hochul, understands that the MTA has to maintain a balanced budget, and that our ability to put on more service and better service, and a lot more service on Long Island, depends on our ability to pay for it. I was reminded that as crazy as some of those work rules that we talked about are, it is irrational, but once they're in a contract, you can't get them out except by agreement. And I think that at some point that issue has to be revised. We have these 100-year-old work rules that outrage the public, like the double payment or triple payment of locomotive of the engineers that we talked about. And we're stuck with it. The public is stuck with it forever, paying massive overtime if they just don't want to negotiate it, no matter how unfair and irrational it seems to everybody. That's a challenge going forward. I also learned that some of the folks who, when these strikes happen, that the frontline workers frequently get blamed, even if they're not the ones on strike. So a tip of the hat to the conductors who were not on strike but had to hear it from the Long Island Railroad riders a lot about how ticked off they were about the inconvenience. I learned again that it is completely nuts that although we have a Taylor law in this state that says public employees of this kind cannot strike, that because in 1918 or 1920, somebody applied Federal Railway Labor Act to private railroads, that it now applies to publicly operated railroads, which makes no sense. But that's the world that we live in, this irrationality that these unions alone can strike because they work for commuter railroads as opposed to the subways or the buses in New York. And I learned that as controversial and hostile, I wouldn't say hostile, but as much back and forth as there is during these strikes, that people do come back to work pretty promptly when they're resolved, and that especially the workforce that is dealing with the reality that they lose 1/3 of a point every day of their salary that they're out on strike, that people were anxious to come back to work, led by the conductors and other unions who never went on strike. So we were able to restore service quickly, and that was a testament to the workforce and also to our Long Island Railroad. So a little bit of a litany, but you asked, and those are my answers.
All right, with the Ben Brockfeld name check, it means per policy, we go direct to AM New York, and represented today by Ethan Stark-Miller. Ethan.
Unfortunately, I can't provide much on the psychoanalysis question front, but I would love to get an update on the fare enforcement on buses, pilot. Where are things standing with that? How many bus lines has this been rolled out to at this point? What has been the rider response to this? And then I had a second question related to Penn.
It is rolling out. It's based on technology, the new technologies, availability. We have enough handheld devices. Do we have enough Eagle teams? So those are the limitations on the pilot, so to speak. So I'll let Demetrius talk about it. But Ethan, so you understand, we're still in the pilot stage because we don't have an unlimited number of handheld devices and people. And the ultimate test will be when we turn off MetroCard once and for all and coin on bus, and then you can really have confidence that everybody who got on the bus ought to have been paid in a way that can be validated through the handheld device. Demetrius.
So one thing that we've been very clear with, transparent on, is as new MTA, we have focused on being transparent on the things that we're doing in advance. And so we were very clear on this program and the intents of this program. We wanted the public to know what they should experience or what they should expect. And so at this point, we are transitioning or ramping up a lot of the service on the express bus lines. We've been focusing a lot of the efforts there for a couple of different reasons. One, people kind of expect to get checked on the express lines, but also it allows us to train our folks on the new technology, and it allows us to be able to ramp things up before we go back to a more heavy presence on the local line. So it does give us to get the time to get the technology in order and train people as we ramp up.
And then on Penn,
I'm not sure you get two, Ethan, honestly, and it's kind of an asked and answered. I took a couple questions on Penn already.
Plus we've got Elijah Westbrook from CBS 2. He's run up already $53.
We don't take questions from people in motor vehicles, though.
He's in the back seat, $53, sir, so far in this Uber,
even worse.
patiently waiting. Let's go to Elijah. Good afternoon.
Elijah.
Afternoon. I'm so sorry I couldn't make it, but I wanted to ask you, Jano, I'm sure you're aware this morning there were a few people who were raising concerns about these Museum of Sex ads on bus. Wanted to just get your take on it. What is your response to these people who are upset about it, but also what's the process like in selecting ads for public transportation?
Okay, so number one, I'm very sympathetic to those folks. There are inevitably, in the world we live in, there are going to be people who have different standards, or in some cases, very different standards of propriety from other people. We have we have First Amendment obligations that prevent us from becoming, the censor of all the ads. We are really constrained on that. We have an advertising committee that reviews things, but they are constrained by the rules of the First Amendment. Because of this sensitivity, for a long time, the Museum of Sex ads, and I'd be happy if they chose not to advertise like they do all over our buses, but they do, and we have limitations on control. For a long time, they just said Museum of Sex. We insisted that they at least add the address, so it wouldn't, people were misunderstanding what the message was. So people would understand this is an actual thing in a place, as strange as it may seem to some folks. But I'm very sympathetic to those folks because they do have, a different standard of propriety. And we don't like offending anybody, but we are operating in a world of First Amendment constraints.
All right, next up we go to Haley Brown of the New York Post.
Speak into the
microphone,
mic, if you
Haley,
would.
just so we can hear you would be great. Thank you.
You remember the
fare-free bus pilot that you agreed to for Mamdani. He said it was going to happen during the World Cup. So has the MTA been meeting with the mayor's office on this, and how's that going? And when does the MTA want that pilot to start?
Okay, so there was never a fare-free bus pilot during the World Cup. There was a fare-free bus pilot that was enacted by the New York State Legislature a couple of years ago. One fare-free bus per borough. We executed on that. We put out a report on what it did or didn't accomplish, and there's been no fare-free bus pilot during the World Cup. You're mistaken. Next question.
Yeah, it's Sam Liebman right next door there from New York 1. Sam? Just turn the microphone on, please, Sam, so we can hear you. Thank you.
I have another question about ads, but about the audio ad pilot. I noticed there was nothing in the board book about it. Is that going to be discontinued?
It was one day.
No, I mean but the one that was approved last year to be extended through this June.
Is Shanifa
is it
around?
just not being renewed?
We can get back to her if you don't have
Shanifa Riera, everybody.
So, Sam, you and I have spoken about this. Yes, the policy is set to sunset, and the ad committee, we are, having conversation and deliberation about whether or not it will be extended or not. But we have heard concerns, comments, and feedback from our riders about the use of audio announcements and ads in the system.
So I assume that's being taken into account, because in the policy itself, it says that rider feedback will be taken into account. It seems that it's been mostly negative.
Not all negative, but yes, we know we did receive lots of feedback from the recent ads, but we have had other ads that have ran that have gotten, positive or neutral reactions.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure that if New York One polled its viewers on whether they like TV ads, they might get a mixed response. You might want to take that into account, Sam.
All right, next we go to Michelle Kasky, standing by over in the Hudson River Pavilion from Bloomberg News. Michelle, there's a microphone to your left. And
Hi,
one
Jenna.
in front.
Again, about Penn Station, how might joining an MOU make the MTA or New York State responsible to help pay for Penn Station's renovation? I mean, basically, I'm asking you, is signing an MOU, would that potentially put some responsibility on MTA?
Are you a lawyer?
I'm not a lawyer.
Okay,
but
so-
you are, so that's why I'm asking you.
So the answer is, if we have an existing agreement that gives us certain rights, if we have a substitute agreement that diminishes those rights or changes those rights, we have lost those rights and we have changed those rights. And among other things, it says instead of your rock solid right to approve any design, including your rock solid right to approve anything that impacts on your service, including construction in other parts of the station, you have the right to comment on the design, but Amtrak in the end gets to decide. If that is the case, and that is the case in what was proposed, that changes our rights, and we're not doing it. I think I've explained that.
You have
So-
explained that, but do you feel like signing an MOU then places more of a financial responsibility then on?
No, it does. What the draft of the MOU said is that we would commit to support Amtrak's effort to obtain state and city financing, which is in violation of Governor Hochul's clear statement that state is not paying.
All right,
So it had many objectionable features. I've tried to articulate a couple of them. I'm really just trying to say it's not that complicated. We have an existing agreement. Anybody who has a lease, who's a tenant, understands if your landlord shows up and says, I want to get rid of your existing agreement and give something that gives me the right to decide what your house is going to look like because I'm going to change it, you might not agree. That's us.
All right, on Zoom, we've got Michael Oreskes from the Strauss News chain of papers.
Yeah,
Michael Oreskes.
I'm in the asked and answered category.
Well,
I'm
we don't
afraid.
know what he
Just-
wants to talk about,
Well,
sir.
okay.
Perhaps he's got an entirely new topic
All
about
right,
something of
all
interest to
right,
the West Side
okay.
community. Michael.
There are many topics of such thing. Well, Jana, I'll ask you then about, your statement that you were agnostic about the design, which historically, and from memory, you've expressed concerns that earlier versions of this design were put the train hall in the wrong place, were way too expensive, and gave a lot of money to Jim Dolan. So that didn't sound agnostic.
Okay, I'm busted. See, I have expressed opinions about whether renovation of Penn Station ought to focus on 7th Avenue end, where 80% of the customers come from. But I guess what I'm trying to express, Michael, is there is a new design which has been presented, at least in rendering form, to the public, and obviously it's moved along, and they've chosen their master developer, and we want to give them a chance to present it and to see what it means for us, especially in light of Governor Hochul's has extracted the commitment, or at least the principle, that the federal government's going to pay for it, not New York. So we are open, we're ready to collaborate, and we're ready to consider what they're putting on the table. But on a going forward basis. So, but we need them to give us the chance to do that without conditions, without saying you got to sign away your rights. I guess West Side, having grown up on the West Side, I know West Siders understand that if you're in a rent stabilized apartment, the landlord shows up and says, I want to give myself the lease to the right to change your apartment, i.e. by knocking it down and putting a tower in place, that you might not agree. We're kind of in a similar position. Tell that to the West Siders.
All right, next up is Ramsey Khalife of WNYC Public Radio, Gothamist. Ramsey.
Just continuing on Penn Station.
Asked and answered. I'm sorry.
Just have a few more questions.
Yeah,
did the governor's office sign off on that letter you sent to Andy Byford and Amtrak? And also, could you detail exactly what the MTA does want out of a Penn Station redevelopment?
I've covered. I think we've been there. We've been there. We're moving on. Yeah. Jose Martinez is here from the City Reporter. Jose.
Thank you for the correct name there, the City Reporter, newly retitled. Jano, how big an advertiser is the Museum of Sex with the MTA? And when you said that the authority asked that the museum change or update its ads, is that because some people were actually under the impression that the buses were a rolling museum of sex?
You laugh, but there were wise guys who were getting on and being, nasty to some of the other people on the bus, including our operators. You can imagine how those dialogues go. So, that was one reason we said, listen, if you want to do this advertising, we can't stop you because of First Amendment, but you really got to make it clear that it's a place and not, some, performance art thing that miscommunicates and creates, negative, weird impressions. So.
And how big of an advertiser is the museum with?
I don't know it offhand. You see the frequency with which they appear. It's like, the only thing I can compare it to is John White's, if anybody is old enough to remember how John White's used to advertise. That was a men's clothing manufacturer on the back of every bus in town. I see the Greifs are nodding. At least there are a few people with memory. Yeah, so it's all done. Yeah, John reminds me, all of the advertising is done through Outfront, which is the largest outdoor advertising company, I believe, in the country. And they're the ones who market and take the orders, and have to live within our First Amendment rules. But we do have this advertising committee that makes sure that those rules are being followed.
All right, thank you, Jano, Demetrius, Shanifa, and Jesse. And good afternoon for Lower Manhattan.